So the problem with Pakistan is that we have a very severe image deficit in the eyes of the international community, and this brand image of Pakistan is impacting Pakistan in every sphere of the international interaction. Like in terms of our foreign policy, if you see our exports, if you see our relations with our neighbor, except I would say China, in all these aspects, our image, our interaction has downgraded. The one thing that you have talked about now is the issue of militancy, for instance. I would say that the indirect strategies are employed by the countries across the world to for certain foreign policy objectives. There was a presence of black water in Pakistan, for instance, and the black water, as a vertical arm of the US CIA, was funded by the American government, and the American government is the largest democracy in the world. Pakistan is not the largest democracy in the world, or Pakistan is not the champion or the cause of freedom, and as such. Like Pakistan has been blamed for militancy, and it has been accepted by the government people in past that Pakistan has supported militancy in the neighboring countries. They have armed and equipped. That was a part of the process that Pakistan was in the middle of the mix of the great power politics of the Cold War era. Like these militants were the part of the American alliance that they forged with the militants to defeat the Soviets in the Afghanistan.
Welcome to another episode of Reality Bites, where we ask hard questions to our guests on issues which are of importance to Pakistan and to the international community. Today, we are joined by Dr. Bilal Zubair, who is currently an assistant professor of international relations at the National Defense University in Islamabad. He has a PhD in international relations from Quaid-e-Azam University and has taught internationally and in Pakistan for many, many years. Importantly, he's also a book author, a commentator, and an analyst. Dr. Zubair, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Dr.
Dr. Saab, my first question, before I get into the nitty-gritty of what soft power is and what diplomacy is, concerns Pakistan's global image. And I'm wondering if you'll agree with me, but most people say Pakistan is a pariah state, a country that has produced and exported religious militancy, not just in its neighborhood, but also to Western Europe and North America. And many diplomats say privately, if not publicly, that Pakistan lacks credibility. Would you agree with these different comments about Pakistan?
Thank you, Dr. Sumi. But you have actually indicated and pointed out is about the perception and image of Pakistan in the international community. And this perception is not in the making in the recent decade or so. A country offers its value in form of its images and perceptions to the outside world, which is a reflection of what is happening internally. So all these factors that you have talked about have been part and parcel of Pakistani state and society, I would say, for last 5 decades. That has built a brand image of Pakistan in the eyes of the international community. And we are actually carrying that legacy forward. So the problem with Pakistan is that we have a very severe image deficit in the eyes of the international community, and this brand image of Pakistan is impacting Pakistan in every sphere of the international interaction. Like in terms of our foreign policy, if you see our exports, if you see our relations with our neighbor, except I would say China, in all these aspects, our image, our interaction has downgraded.
Right. So largely, you do agree with perceptions, international perceptions about Pakistan. Dr. Zubair, I'd like to present you with some evidence or some of the perceptions. Some more perceptions about Pakistan. There was a meeting of the Foreign Service Program class of 2016 at the University of Oxford in England, which mainly comprised of diplomats from all over the world. They weren't just Indians or people from Bangladesh. And they were asked, what 3 things come to mind when you hear about Pakistan? And the majority of the respondents cited nuclear weapons, terrorism, security, Islam, and the Taliban. Would you agree that Pakistan's perception abroad centers around these very negative aspects?
So, what has happened for the last 2 decades is that the framing of any country or any brand goes through a process of the media framing, right? And these media framing creates certain images and perceptions about any brand, any commodity, or even a nation, and that then becomes a part of the general perception of the masses, which want to create an image or an impression about a particular country. So Pakistan has been a victim of the media framing, I would say. It's not like that Pakistan doesn't have these problems, but how these problems have been framed in the international media is creating this problem for Pakistan. So I would emphasize on this point that Pakistan is facing an image deficit. But the problem with Pakistan is that Pakistan hasn't been able to negate these perceptions about Pakistan. What Pakistan lack is a coherent strategic communication, which enables a country to change or alter the perception which has been framed by your enemies, for instance, in the international media. Like the English is the language that is spoken, that is understood by the international audiences. But in Pakistan, we don't have a single English news channel that can project or that can state Pakistan's mission, Pakistan's image, improve Pakistan image, or give a perception about Pakistan. So one thing you are right that Pakistan is known for these things, but it is also about how we are unable to change the perceptions or create an image of ourselves. For instance, back in 2010, there was a study that which are the 100 most violent cities in the world. Not a single Pakistani city was among the 100 most violent cities in the world. There was Cape Town, there was Chicago, there was New York, there was London. Not a single city, even like Karachi or Peshawar of Pakistan. Pakistan at that time was in the middle of that terrorism wave and everything. But how the media projects and shapes the perception about Pakistan, particularly the international media. So these are the things which are more palatable to the global audience when they talk about Pakistan. The problem with Pakistan is Pakistan hasn't been able to give an alternative view of Pakistan.
Hmm.
So the mix of the large mix of the news emanating from Pakistan or about Pakistan is about the nuclear proliferation, the terrorism, and perhaps the women rights or abuses that you have mentioned.
Hmm. But Dr. Zubair, I do understand that you are associated with universities that are run by the government. For that matter, so am I. But you've presented Pakistan as a victim of, let's say, an international propaganda campaign. But surely, Dr. Zubair, a lot of this is our own doing. Have we not been training, arming, and then facilitating militants to cross the border, whether it's the Kashmir dispute or it's Afghanistan? How can we simply shift the blame to outsiders without really any introspection into what we've been doing for the past many decades?
Like the one thing that you have talked about now is the issue of militancy, for instance. Uh, I would say that the indirect strategies are employed by the countries across the world to for certain foreign policy objectives. There was a presence of black water in Pakistan, for instance, and the black water, as a vertebral arm of the US CIA, was funded by the American government. And the American government is the largest democracy in the world. Pakistan is not the largest democracy in the world, or Pakistan is not the champion of the cause of freedom and as such. Like Pakistan has been blamed for militancy, and it has been accepted by the government people in past that Pakistan has supported militancy in the neighboring countries. They have armed and equipped, but that was a part of the process that Pakistan was in the middle of the mix of the great power politics of the Cold War era. Like these militants were the part of the American alliance that they forged with the militants to defeat the Soviets in the Afghanistan. And Pakistan, I'm not just shoving the blame away from Pakistan. Pakistan was in the mix in terms of training those people with the American support, with the Middle Eastern countries' support, and then launching them into Afghanistan. And when the America there was an end to the Afghan conflict, America left us with those militants. We do use them as a strategic arm, as a vertebral arm in for our own foreign policy objectives. But it's not merely for Pakistan to be blamed how these militants were created or how they were used for Pakistan's own strategic objectives. India is waging an indirect war inside Pakistan by the use of of their own choice of militants inside Pakistan. So is Afghanistan, perhaps Iran. You never know. So this is something we call the indirect strategy or the indirect war, which is employed by the states, which do not want to have a direct conflict by the regular forces or the conventional forces.
Right, then everyone's involved in this dirty, shady business, and not just
Okay.
the Pakistani state. Dr. Zubair, could we now come to these specific terms? Some of them you've already used in your talk so far. Ideas such as soft power. How do you define soft power, and why is it particularly crucial for countries like Pakistan?
So, soft power is a concept that has been popularized by the likes of Joseph Nye in the post-Cold War period. It's not like that it is a new term. It was used by Peter Bratz and Peter Bajaj back in 1950s in their very influential book Two-Dimensional View of Power. But it became more fashionable in the post-Cold War period. So this term soft power refers to the ability of attraction to influence the minds and hearts of the people within your own country or living abroad, the foreign audience, through primarily three means, which are the culture, the political system, and the foreign policy of a country. So if you have a culture that is very recognizable culture or a very attractive culture, which other people want to accept or adopt to, or if you have a foreign policy that is based on providing the global goods to the people of the world, this would be likable by the external audience. Similarly, if you have a political system like democracy, for instance, is a very likable political system because it gives the people the freedom of choice, the freedom of movement, freedom of association. If you have such a political system that is likable by the people, it would add a positive image of your country and would create a positive perception of your country. So soft power is about winning the hearts and minds without the use of force or or threatening someone by the hard power.
Right, fair enough. But Dr. Zubair, would you agree that there's a direct correlation between a country's soft power and a country being a liberal democracy? Because we normally see that countries with the highest soft power happen to be Western liberal democracies, and this might also include exceptions such as South Korea and India. But is there a direct correlation between having soft power and being a democracy?
I would agree. I would agree to this notion, and the reason is that the democracies fundamentally are the countries which have very attractive culture. These are the societies which are based on the notion of pluralism. These are the societies which do not create biases or treat people on the base of their ethnicities and religion. Primarily, I'm not saying that the total sum of the societies are right, but the majority of the people within these societies do act in a certain way which resonate to the ideas of pluralism. So yes, democracies are normally in those countries which have the larger appeal towards accepting the cultures, traditions, values of other people and coexisting with the peoples of other races.
So, Dr. Zubair, would you agree then that Pakistan is at a grave disadvantage because we've never actually been a democracy, even when we do have elected civilian governments? We are told by those civilians, we are told by ex-prime ministers that they were actually never in charge. So the problem is that we've never been a democracy, and therefore our efforts for soft power will never be quite as successful as those of our neighbors who are democracies.
So, Dr. Sumit, this is a very interesting question which you have posed, and I would like to give a comparison of the countries which are not democracies, but they are very high in the global soft power index. For instance, the state like China. China has been authoritarian state for 5,000 years in one or the other form. It was ruled by dynasties, and then there was a nationalist government that was controlled by the external powers, and then you had the communist state since 1949. China had been a communist state as an authoritarian state, but in the soft power index, China is third in the global ranking. If you go towards the Middle Eastern authoritarian states such as Qatar or the UAE, they have a very high soft power index. Singapore is an authoritarian state; it's a one-party state where they have a democracy by contestation, but it's not a democracy in the true sense of terms. There are elections, but they are not democracy. Soft power does not only depend upon your political system. It also is nurtured and expressed through your culture, through your adoption of the global values. For instance, the UAE and the Qatar, they are the capitalist societies. They have a very strong economic base and they attract huge global investments. So the brand of Qatar and UAE or China creates the soft power for those countries which are very attractive for the foreign direct investment. They are very attractive for the people to go there, to live there, to enjoy if they are going for the tourism purposes and so forth for shopping, etc. The problem with the Pakistan has been that Pakistan has been marred by political instability. That political instability has translated into economic instability. We are not a very attractive country in terms of attracting the global attention to come here and invest in Pakistan. We don't have the law and order situation uh, through which we can attract the global FDI. Nobody is willing to come to Pakistan to invest in Pakistan except China, being our very trustworthy friend for so many decades. Uh, we have not promoted our tourism. We have not promoted our cultural and heritage. That is very deep and very attractive. If if we could have uh, could have been able to capitalize upon it, we should have advertised it. So and then there has been an intermittent rule of military and democracy, and to some extent the hybrid regimes as we call them. So these problems with Pakistan has barred Pakistan to create a soft power based image and brand Pakistan as an attractive destination. For instance, we have recently faced this internet problem that was caused by some firewall experimentation. Now, the IT industry, that is the booming industry in Pakistan, who would be willing to come to Pakistan and invest in IT sector when you are having these internet-related problems in Pakistan? There is an electricity shortfall in Pakistan. Electricity prices are going very high. Who is going to come to Pakistan to invest in the industrial sector in Pakistan when the electricity prices are so high? When it comes to the judiciary and giving the legal rights and the legal covers to the business who are investing in Pakistan, there is no proper mechanism through which we can ensure that your investment in Pakistan is secure and you will be able to take sizable profit. And we can talk about like the extremism, the new wave of extremism, where whenever there is the problem in the country, there is sacrilegious caricatures or there is a burning of Quran. God forbidden, we attack the people here who have invested in Pakistan's economy. So these things create a perception about a country, that how friendly a country is towards attracting the foreigners to invest in Pakistan or to even attend Pakistan for leisure purposes or for tourism purposes. So the mix of how we have actually developed our polity, how we have developed our unable to develop our economy, and not capitalized upon those aspects of Pakistani heritage and culture, which are very consumable by the foreign investors or the people who want to visit Pakistan, has actually disabled Pakistan ability to create a soft power pool for itself and attract the global audience towards Pakistan.
Right. In this list that you just shared with us, the problems that we faced and which have led to Pakistan not having a high index of soft power. On top of this list, Dr. Zubair, you've placed political instability. So I have a direct question for you this time. Who is responsible for Pakistan's political instability?
So, political instability, no one actor can be pinpointed for the political instability in Pakistan. It is like Pakistan, as yourself is specialized in the colonial post-colonial studies. Uh, Partly, it is a problem that we inherited due to the non-surgical divide of the subcontinent, and we created these countries which had very significant lingering geopolitical problems. And these geopolitical problems, along with strong colonial institutions which wanted to retain their primacy on the resources, on the polity, on the financial resources, disabled the political elite to exert and develop its strength and function the country in a democratic manner. And then the political representation was not truly the political representation which actually were involved in the creation of Pakistan. Like in terms of Muslim leagues, political presence in this part of India was negligible. In the eastern Pakistan, yes, they had the political presence, but in this part, so this part of Pakistan or the western part of Pakistan was predominantly the political elite here were the feudals, were the people who had more inclination towards an authoritarian rule rather than, and they had been ruled by the authoritarian rule as compared to the other part of Pakistan. So, like, if you talk about the political instability in Pakistan, it's a mix of so many things. The external factors have contributed, but like if we see the first few years of Pakistan, when Pakistan was in the stage of an economic takeoff in terms of creating real value for Pakistan and the institutions that we were able to create, and very rational decision in the initial. So there is a case study that I was teaching about Pakistan in the international development or developmental management context, about the developmental failures. And Pakistan was one of the country that was listed developmental failure because Pakistan started too well, and Pakistan had all the ingredients where Pakistan could have had a very successful takeoff. Pakistan was a miracle economy of the early 1960s. But due to this political instability, we were unable to translate into something beneficial for our own selves.
Dr. Zubair, I'm aware that you're also interested in strategic studies, and you've just mentioned that in the 1960s, Pakistan seemed to have taken off on the economic front. But isn't it true that this apparent economic takeoff was because Pakistan had leveraged its geographic location and offered itself up as a mercenary state to the Americans in their containment of Soviet communism?
So I would say Pakistan, through that role, could have capitalized upon that role and would have enabled ourselves to develop strong political institutions, have taken good economic and political decisions for our own selves. There have been countries like Pakistan, who have been the victim of their geography, or they have capitalized their geography for their own political ends. But they have capitalized upon that. Like the Koreans, the South Koreans were in the mix of the Soviet and American war and Chinese war from 1950 till 1953, sorry. And then they were part of the Western Bloc, the South Koreans. They continued whatever form of the political system they had. It was an authoritarian political system. They continued for next 40 years. They developed the economic stability. They became the miracle economies of the Asia, and then they moved towards democratization, and they became a very successful democracy. So the problem with Pakistan is that the continuous interference of the non-political institutions whenever they thought that Pakistan can be a beneficiary of the international aid or international assistance that would create economic growth but not economic development in the true sense of terms, and would be a transitionary I would say transaction. It would be a partial transaction for a decade or so. They have only capitalized upon them and not built the real institutions that would have nurtured the economic development in the true sense of terms. One thing that I often compare Pakistan with India, for instance, that when Pakistan was actually capitalizing on the economic growth, as you have mentioned, supported by the external aid or financial assistance, India was creating the long-term development through investing in factories, through investing in creating the real economy. They had imposed import substitute industrialization policies. They developed their own industries to such an extent that they were able to export and then switch to export-oriented industrialization. So Pakistan has actually missed those good times when Pakistan was industrializing, but Pakistan's somehow become more infested towards the foreign aid or foreign assistance to spur its economic activities and did not capitalize upon developing its industries that could have benefited Pakistan way more than the periodic economic assistance in the form of the financial aid.
So, if I followed you, Dr. Zubair, you are saying that Pakistan's colonial institutes, primarily its civilian and military bureaucracies, they have been interfering in Pakistan's political system, and their interactions with the international community were transactional and not long term. So, are you saying that the first thing that Pakistan needs to do for soft power, for political stability, for economic stability is to be a viable democracy? Or are you saying that we can also follow the models of countries like South Korea, where we can work on we can work on law and order, we can work on the economy, and then we transition towards being a democracy?
So, like I would say that there are certain periods in a state's history where they have to take certain decisions, and then they have to move on for the other decisions. Like this model that you are presenting or offering, that Pakistan could be a authoritarian regime and ensure a political stability and then translate into a democracy and then become a viable democracy. There was a time for that. And that time used to be the 1950s, 1960s, 70s, and perhaps 80s. So for today, Pakistan becoming a authoritarian state and then taking another 40 years and then becoming democracy does not feel viable. For me, the democracy, and sometimes we are so much critical of our political leaders. I would say that a political leader, whoever you support, it was Imran Khan, or it was Nawaz Sharif, or it was Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, had they been given 30 years, 40 years, good term, as the Congress in the 35 years of the first, uh, at the inception of the modern India, the first 35 years, they were ruling India. They brought the political stability. If you want a political stability in Pakistan, you must have a continuity of democracy, a transition that is based on democratic norms, is based on free and fair elections, and political contestation without any outside interference. The organically evolved political dispensation is the only answer for Pakistan to move forward in a successful manner. We cannot say that there would be another transitional relationship that would be based on one-time democracy, one-time authoritarian regime, and then democracy, and then a hybrid democracy, and then a democracy, and then it hasn't worked for Pakistan. It won't work for Pakistan. A brief comparison would be that Bangladesh is not in a good economic and political conditions these days. But the textile policy of Bangladesh was drafted back in 2000, implemented in 2002. For next 22 years in Bangladesh, the state of Bangladesh has the same textile policy. From 2002, when during the Musharraf time, when the political regime was installed in Pakistan, from that time onwards, every political regime has brought their own textile policy. Pakistan is a textile based, like we have a huge component of our economy that is coming from textile, a huge part of labor that is invested in the textile industry. And from that time onwards, we have 5 textile policies for Pakistan. So it shows that the political instability has severely marred our ability to create real economic incentive for our businesses, for our people, and for our economy as a whole.
Hmm. Right then. Dr. Zubair, my final question to you for this session. You've already mentioned the biggest challenges that Pakistan faces in terms of improving its soft power. But if you were talking to Pakistan's deep state, if people in the civil and military bureaucracies were listening to you, do you have any specific policy guidelines or suggestions for them? Are there actions that they need to take immediately? And what are those top 3 things that they need to do to improve Pakistan's image internationally?
So it's a hard question, I would say, to advise to the deep state in Pakistan or the establishment in Pakistan. But one thing that I actually have been pondering upon for quite some time is that, you know, the existing social contract in Pakistan has not been able to give the real benefit in terms of a political arrangement that has really benefited Pakistan. And when I'm talking about the social contract, and you can see it in different ways. Like the I would say 1970 Constitution is a very powerful document. It is a very comprehensive document, but it can be interpreted in so many ways. Like if you see the Constitution of Germany, for instance, a federal country, but the role and responsibilities and the provisions of every institution is so well defined, it's so well crafted that you cannot go beyond this particular domain. This is your limit financially, politically, these are your limits. Institutionally, these are your limits. They're very well defined constitution. In Pakistan, I do see the provision of a new social contract. And when I'm talking about a social contract, it is also about the political elite and the non-political elite to come together and sit and share the responsibility of taking Pakistan ahead in a conciliatory manner. Like Pakistan cannot afford to be a state where we create victims after victims, and we are not letting the political participation in such a manner where our whims and wishes are above the constitution. So a social contract, a revamping of the social contract would require all the actors, all the stakeholders to sit together and come up with a plan of action where truly Pakistan can move ahead. And it's like Pakistanis, I don't see that they don't have the acumen, the political acumen, or the institutional acumen to not see where Pakistan should be. So, like we need to move ahead from or go beyond our own parochial institutional interest and see the interest of Pakistan. That would be my advice to the whoever is listening.
Right. Which is also a topic for a new debate. But thank you very much for joining us today, Dr. Bilal Zubair. That is the end of the show, but we hope to keep talking to you and taking up these matters of interest with you in the future.
Thank you, Dr. Zubair.